Hello, everybody. My name's Harper Keeler, and I run the urban farm here at University of Oregon. And we're going to do a little we're going to continue a tradition that we've done here for many, many years that was started from by a woman named Ann Bettman, who is pretty much the reason why the farm is here and why we do this. But we thought, in all this tough times that we're going through, that doing a little homage to Beltane and May Day would be a hoot. And I got a few friends who are socially distancing themselves to join me today. So just a quick story. So what we've done is, here's our maypole. Unfortunately, we're not going to do a maypole dance this year, but we're going to do a little talk about what that's about. And from you might be able to see there's a circle. We've created a circle, and this is the traditional sort of Celtic way of celebration. And I've set up the circle in the following way. Basically, there's 4 cardinal directions: north, south, west, and east. And each of these cardinal directions represents a certain time of the year. And if you think about, the sun takes a year to travel around the earth. When this mythology or this tradition started, that's what they believed. And those cardinal directions also represent the winter solstice, the shortest day, the summer solstice directly across, and then the 2 equinoxes when the sun and the light and the dark are equal, right? And those are special days. And when you think about those 4 cardinal directions, there's also the 4 elements of fire and earth and air and water. And the way you kind of think about that is, in the north, where fire is, the fire signs are things like passion and masculinity and heat. Opposite that is the earth signs, which are associated with the winter solstice. We think of earth as being grounded and stable and supportive. And then in the watery west, you think about the watery west is where it's a very feminine thing. It's magnetic, it's energetic, it's intuitive. And then perhaps over in the east is the air signs, and the air is possibility and calming and coolness, those kind of things. And I think we know, in our society, we kind of recognize the solstices and the equinoxes, but in this context, it's the quarter holidays that are the high holidays. And we're meeting here today because we're on one, which is Beltane, which is May Day. And what I'd like to do is walk around the circle and just talk briefly about how we look at the sun and the experiences around us to organize what we think about, mostly in terms of agriculture. So what we do this time of year, today's Beltane, we're getting our onions out, we're putting beets in, we're getting ready to put the tomatoes in. All those things have to happen at the right time. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit, okay? But also, there's a really cool myth. If you think about the sun traveling around the earth, there's a story about the sun. And I'm going to talk about the Sun King and how he applies to this cycle around the world. Okay, so starting from the start, if we're in the winter solstice, it's the time when there's the shortest days, right? The most hours of darkness. But something magical happens on December 21st. The days start getting longer. So what the mythology is the Sun King is being born. And if you think about that, there's sort of parallel Christian mythology about birth at December 21st. But we're thinking about the Sun King, and he's being born, and as he moves across the, he starts to grow and move across the world. He gets to Candlemas, and Candlemas is the first high holiday in the Celtic tradition, and we celebrate Candlemas as Groundhog's Day. And you think about, you know, the rodent climbs out, and if he sees a shadow, it's going to be winter. But basically, it's a rite of looking at the sun. How is the sun coming? It's starting to warm up a little bit. And this time of year, February, we're starting to think about, should we start our onions in the greenhouse? Should we start doing that kind of thing in preparation for the warmth that's coming?
The lambs are born.
And the lambs are being born. So if you move across to the solstice, which is called Oscara, the solstice is, if you, the equinox. This is the autumnal, the vernal equinox. Days and light and dark are equal. The Sun King is now kind of a rambunctious young dude. He's like not quite a teenager. The sun, we feel the sun on our heads and our shoulders. It's starting to happen. Things are waking up. Perennials are starting to bloom, and you can feel that the sun is important, right? And I'm going to go real brief, but after that, we're moving along to Beltane, where we are today. Now the Sun King, he's been growing up, and now the Sun King is a randy, virile dude. And if you think about that, what are we doing this time of the year? This is the time of fertility. This is the time when all the flowers are happening. This is the time when the birds and the bees are doing their thing. The mason bees are going crazy, getting the pollen out of the trees. The honeybees are all out working. It's a time of fertility. And in the Christian myth, you know, we just passed Easter a little bit ago. You think about Easter eggs and bunnies. There's lots and lots of fertility imagery that happens that's all around us now. I had a colleague that said there's sex in the garden and it's going on, right? And we have to provide that if we want. We have to plant the stuff now. If we don't put my onions in now, 6 months from now, I'm not going to have storage onions in my basement at Thanksgiving. This is important stuff, right? And you had to know that. So moving along, we get to Licha, which is it's an earth holiday, but it's the summer solstice. It's the day where the sun starts, the daylight hours start to decrease. And we live in a maritime climate, and if you think about Celtic religion or Celtic tradition, geographically they're very much the same as we are here in the maritime Northwest. So a lot of this, the timing works for what we do agriculturally and what happens where this Celtic tradition began. So now the Sun King reached his middle age. He's still a badass. There's lots of sun, and the weather's going to stay warm for quite some time, but it's going to start to trickle off a little bit, right? So, and then the Sun King moves along. He's getting older, and we reach Lammas, which is the other high holiday. Our friend Steve is Lammas, and Lammas is known as the wheat harvest. It's the time when you would bring in the wheat that we planted way back at Candlemas, or a little bit after that. We started thinking about sowing our wheat. And like I said, you have to do it then to get to here, right? And now the Sun King is a venerable dude. He's like, you know, still got chops, but he's, you know, the days are starting to cool off. And then we move over to the equinox, where now darkness is equal to the lightness. And now the Sun King is kind of, you know, Harrison Ford kind. He's old, but he's still, you know, got it going, and it's wonderful. But it's towards the end, and we're realizing that the coming of the darkness is coming. Um, so moving around, which will be 6 months from now, is Samhain. And Samhain is a high holiday that we celebrate as Halloween or All Hallows Eve. And what's interesting about Samhain is Sun King he's got one sort of last journey in him, and he moves from the equinox into Samhain. He's almost getting towards his death time, and perhaps that's where the imagery of ghosts and goblins comes from. It's kind of the veil between the light and the dark is it's at its thinnest, and you know, if we don't plant our garlic way back then, or actually we're going to plant our garlic now so that 9 months later the garlic is going to be ready over there in the solstice. We have to do these things at the right time, because if we don't, we're not going to have garlic here at Halloween to fend off the vampires that are going to come, right? So you get the idea. So the Sun King has one last thing to do, and that is to sail across the Sea of Darkness looking for the Isle of Light that he'll find which will enable him to be reborn as the next Sun King at the birth time in December. So the takeaway, and what we like to talk about here, is it's all about cycles. And that mythology, there's layers of circles, there's layers of cycles, but at the end of the day, it all comes back around, right? And I was happy to do this today because we're dealing with some pretty dark stuff right now. And we're going to just soldier on. We're going to keep planting things. We're going to keep preparing for the fall, because it's going to come. We're going to get out of this stuff. And I just wanted to bring a greeting in this tradition that we've done at the Urban Farm for a very long time, to say, everybody take care of yourself, because we're going to get through this. The light will come, and then we'll do it again and again. So thank you, my friends, for joining me.
Amen.
Be safe out
You're
there,
here.
everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.